Have you ever loved someone who slowly made you forget who you were? Not all at once, but piece by piece. It starts so quietly you don't even notice. You tell yourself this is what love feels like: intense, consuming, imperfect. You tell yourself no relationship is easy, but deep down something feels off. You feel it in the pit of your stomach, that quiet whisper saying something isn't right. Yet you silence it, because losing them feels worse than losing yourself. That's how it begins. The story of almost love. The kind that burns bright at first, so bright it blinds you. They see you in a way no one ever has. They listen, they laugh, they pull you close, and make you believe you've finally been chosen. For a moment, you stop questioning everything you've ever doubted about yourself. They become the proof that maybe, just maybe, you are enough, after all. And that feeling? It's addictive. You start to crave it, the validation, the warmth, the way their attention wraps around your insecurities and calls it love. But what you don't see is how slowly that warmth starts to fade. It's not sudden. It's never sudden. It's a slow erosion disguised as care. The compliments turn into critiques. The curiosity becomes control. What once felt like connection now feels like walking on glass, afraid to step the wrong way. You start to monitor yourself. Your tone, your timing, your words. You replay every conversation in your mind, searching for the moment you might have said too much or not enough. You find yourself apologizing just to keep the peace, even when you've done nothing wrong. You start believing that love is supposed to hurt like this, that this is what passion looks like. But deep down, a quiet ache grows. A truth you're not ready to face yet. This isn't love. It's dependency dressed as devotion. Toxic relationships don't begin with pain. They begin with promise. That's what makes them so dangerous. The very person who makes you feel seen is the same one who will later make you feel invisible. The one who once admired your strength will call it stubbornness. The one who once loved your sensitivity will call it weakness. And you'll believe them, because your heart is already tied to the memory of who they were when things were good. You'll hold on to that version, hoping it comes back, not realizing it was never real. It was a mask designed to pull you close enough to stay. You convince yourself things will get better. You tell yourself they just need time, patience, understanding. You remember the laughter, the late-night talks, the way they once made you feel alive. That memory becomes your prison, because every time they hurt you, they also give you just enough kindness to keep you from walking away. And that's not an accident. It's psychology. Your brain begins to link love with chaos, pain with purpose, and it keeps you hooked. It's not weakness that keeps you there, it's hope. Hope that the person you fell for is still in there somewhere. Hope that love can fix what's breaking you. Hope that if you just try harder, they'll see your worth again. But here's the truth. They already see it. That's why they take it. Because people who feel small will always try to shrink the ones who make them feel smaller. You're not crazy for missing them. You're human. You were taught to believe that love means sacrifice, that loyalty means staying no matter what. But love that costs you your peace isn't love. It's manipulation. And the moment you start realizing that, something shifts. A small spark inside you remembers who you were before the chaos, before the fear, before you forgot that love is supposed to heal, not hurt. So listen carefully. You are not broken for loving someone who couldn't love you back in a healthy way. You are not foolish for believing in their potential. You are simply giving your heart to someone who didn't know what to do with it. But if you stay until the end of this story, you'll learn something powerful, not about them, but about you, about the part of you that still knows what real love feels like, even if you haven't felt it in a long time. About the strength that's been waiting quietly underneath the pain, ready to rise the moment you decide you've had enough. Because there is a way out. And it doesn't start with them changing. It starts with you remembering. Remembering that you were whole before they came along, that your worth was never meant to be negotiated, and that no amount of love is worth losing yourself for. You've been carrying their voice in your head for so long that it's hard to tell where they end and you begin. Their words echo in your silence, shaping how you see yourself, how you move, how you breathe. But here's the truth they never wanted you to realize. You were never the problem. You were the mirror, and mirrors terrify people who can't face their own reflection. Every insult, every manipulation, every moment they made you question your worth wasn't about you. It was about control, power, fear. They needed to break your confidence to keep their illusion intact. Because if you ever saw yourself clearly, if you ever remembered your strength, you'd leave. And deep down, they knew that. That's why they made you doubt your instincts. That's why they made you apologize for existing. Because once you start believing you deserve less, you'll accept anything. But that's the illusion breaking now, isn't it? The fog lifting, even if just for a second. That quiet moment when you realize the peace you've been craving doesn't exist with them. It exists beyond them. That's the crack in the cycle. The place where awareness begins to cut through conditioning. It's the hardest truth to accept because it means everything you thought was love might have been something else entirely. But it's also the moment where you start taking your life back. See, toxic relationships are built on repetition. The same arguments, the same apologies, the same promises that never mean anything. It's a loop designed to keep you exhausted. When you're tired, you're easier to control. When you're doubting yourself, you're easier to convince. But once you start noticing the pattern, you weaken its hold. You start seeing the script for what it is. A cycle that survives only as long as you keep playing your part. And the moment you stop responding the same way, everything starts to shift. That's where power lives. In the pause. In the decision not to explain yourself one more time. In the choice to walk away instead of trying to fix what was never yours to fix. That's not coldness. That's clarity. It's your mind reclaiming the space that was hijacked by chaos. And it's terrifying at first, because peace feels strange when you've lived in survival mode. Silence feels like loss when you've been trained to associate love with noise. But stay there. Stay in the quiet long enough, and you'll realize that peace isn't emptiness. It's the sound of freedom returning. You don't have to wait for closure. You don't need their apology to heal. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you deciding that their version of you no longer defines who you are. It's the day you stop chasing explanations and start rebuilding boundaries. The day you choose truth over fantasy. That's when you reclaim your story. That's when you start to rise. Because here's what most people never tell you. Healing from a toxic relationship isn't just about leaving someone. It's about unlearning the belief that you're hard to love. It's about remembering that peace isn't boring, kindness isn't weakness, and consistency isn't too much to ask for. You start realizing that love isn't supposed to make you smaller. It's supposed to help you grow. And once that realization settles into your bones, everything changes. You stop romanticizing chaos. You stop calling manipulation passion. You stop mistaking control for care. You begin to crave something different, something quieter, deeper, real. You start choosing people who don't make you question your worth. You start trusting the voice inside you that says, "This doesn't feel right," instead of silencing it. You start living like you matter, because you do. There will be moments when you'll want to go back. That's normal. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. But every time you feel that pull, remember why you left. Remember how small you felt when you kept trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Remember that you don't have to prove your worth to anyone ever again. One day, you'll look back and realize that the pain didn't break you. It built you. It stripped away everything false, so you could finally see who you were meant to become. You'll understand that the person who survived that chaos deserves more than survival. They deserve peace, joy, and love that feels safe. You don't owe them another chance. You owe yourself a new beginning. And it starts the moment you decide you're done settling for half love and broken promises. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to save you and realize you are always the rescue. Freedom doesn't arrive in a single dramatic moment. It starts quietly, like a small breath after years of holding it in. It's the first time you say no and mean it. The first time you don't explain why. The first time you choose yourself, even when it feels like loss. That's how healing begins. Not with perfection, but with defiance. Every small act of reclaiming your power sends a message to the part of you that forgot it existed. You start to realize that leaving wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing you've ever done. But healing isn't soft. It's not pretty. It's messy, raw, and often lonely. Because when you finally walk away from toxicity, you don't just lose them. You lose the version of yourself that needed them. You lose the illusion, the hope, the fantasy of what it could have been. And that hurts. Sometimes that hurt feels worse than the relationship itself. But that pain, it's not a setback. It's a signal. It's your heart rebuilding its rhythm after years of chaos. It's the ache of returning to yourself. There will be days when you question everything, when the silence feels heavier than the noise ever did, when the memories try to convince you that it wasn't that bad, that maybe you overreacted, that maybe if you'd stayed, they would have changed. But those thoughts are just ghosts, fragments of conditioning left behind by someone who taught you to doubt your own reality. Don't feed them, let them pass, because every time you resist the urge to romanticize your pain, you grow stronger. Every time you choose truth over nostalgia, you build something unbreakable inside you. You'll start noticing little shifts. You'll sleep better. You'll laugh again, not because you're pretending, but because you actually feel light. You'll realize that peace doesn't need permission, that joy doesn't have to be earned, that love, when it's real, doesn't require you to shrink yourself just to fit inside someone else's comfort. And that realization changes everything. It rewires the way you see the world. You stop chasing validation and start seeking alignment. You stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And here's the thing. Once you reach that point, your energy changes. You no longer attract people who feed on your pain. You start drawing in those who match your peace. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You begin to understand that love isn't supposed to make you anxious. It's supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to make you more of who you are, not less. That's not a fantasy. It's the standard you should have had all along, but don't rush it. Growth isn't about pretending you're fine. It's about sitting with the truth until it loses its power over you. It's about learning to be alone without feeling empty. It's about forgiving yourself for the things you tolerated when you didn't know better. Healing is an act of rebellion against every lie they made you believe. It's you taking back the narrative, one breath at a time. You were taught to think survival was strength, but real strength is peace. Real strength is walking away before the apology. Real strength is loving yourself enough to stop explaining your worth to those who refuse to see it. That's the kind of strength that builds a new life. A life that's not defined by pain, but by purpose. Because one day, you'll look back and realize you didn't just escape something toxic. You evolved. You became someone new. Someone who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't settle. Someone who understands that love without respect is just control in disguise. Someone who can spot manipulation a mile away and walk away without guilt. That's freedom. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of clarity. And when that clarity takes root, you'll finally see it, the truth that was always waiting beneath the noise. You were never unworthy. You were never too much. You were simply giving your love to someone who didn't know what to do with something pure. But you do now. You know what love is supposed to feel like, and more importantly, you know what it's not. So let this be your turning point. Not just an ending, but a rebirth. The moment you stop carrying their chaos and start creating your peace. The moment you stop waiting for permission to heal and realize the power's been in your hands all along. Because healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about becoming someone who will never settle for less again. And that's not the end of your story. That's the beginning of your freedom. Freedom gives you space to breathe, but it also forces you to face yourself. When the noise is gone, you can finally hear what's been whispering underneath it all, the truth that you stayed, because you were afraid of what life would feel like without them, afraid of the silence, afraid of the unknown. But that silence you feared so much, it's not emptiness, it's possibility. It's the sound of your life waiting to begin again. And the unknown isn't your enemy, it's your freedom dressed as fear. You've already survived what was meant to destroy you. You've already done the hardest part, leaving. Now the real work begins, rebuilding. Relearning what safety feels like. Teaching your heart that calm isn't danger, that peace isn't a trap, that you don't need someone else's approval to feel whole. You start small. A morning without anxiety, a night where you don't replay old conversations in your mind, a moment when you catch yourself smiling and realize it's not for anyone else, it's for you. That's how self-trust returns, slowly, quietly. But once it's back, it changes everything. Because when you start trusting yourself again, manipulation loses its grip. You stop falling for words that don't match actions. You stop believing love requires suffering. You stop ignoring red flags painted in plain sight. And this time, you listen to that inner voice, the one that once whispered warnings you were too afraid to follow. Now it's louder, clearer, and it's yours. Healing doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you stop letting it define what comes next. You carry the lessons, not the weight. You learn that forgiveness isn't about excusing them. It's about releasing yourself. You forgive so you can be free, not so they can feel better. You release so you can move forward without dragging their shadow into every new chapter. Because every time you let go of something that no longer deserves space in your heart, you create room for something real. And here's the truth most people don't say out loud. After the storm, you'll grieve. Not just the person, but the version of yourself that tolerated the pain. You'll mourn the lost time, the missed chances, the years spent believing love had to hurt. But grief is just love with nowhere to go. So you turn it inward. You give it back to yourself. You pour it into your dreams, your passions, your purpose. You stop chasing love and start creating it from within. Because once you understand your worth, your energy changes again. You start attracting peace like gravity. You begin to see that what you once called love was just survival. And you are done surviving. You were made for more than endurance. You were made to rise. The same sensitivity that once made you a target now becomes your power. Your empathy turns into wisdom. Your pain becomes purpose. Every scar becomes proof that you didn't just survive, you transformed. This is where the story shifts. You stop asking why they couldn't love you right, and you start asking why you kept trying to prove you deserved it. That question changes everything. It forces you to build a foundation that no one else can shake. You stop waiting to be chosen. You start choosing yourself again and again until it becomes natural. You stop explaining your boundaries. You enforce them without guilt. Because you finally understand that saying no is not cruelty, it's protection. The world will still test you. People will still try to pull you back into old patterns. But you've seen too much to go backward now. You know what it costs to stay small. You know what it feels like to be silenced, and you will never silence yourself again. You've stepped into a new kind of power, the kind that doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to chase, doesn't need to beg. The kind that simply is. This is what freedom really looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, certain, unshakable. You walk differently when you finally believe you deserve peace. You speak differently when you know your worth isn't up for debate. You love differently when you understand that real love doesn't demand your suffering as proof. You become the kind of person who can never again be broken the same way. Because once you remember your value, no one can make you forget it. And when you look in the mirror now, you see it. The strength, the calm, the quiet power that was always there waiting for you to come home to yourself. That's not the end of your story. That's the beginning of your life. You've made it this far, and that means something. It means the version of you that once begged to be understood no longer runs the show. The version that stayed quiet to keep the peace is learning that silence is not safety. It's surrender. You've stopped shrinking yourself just to be loved, and you're starting to understand that love built on fear isn't love at all. Every day you wake up and choose to keep going, you're rewriting the story that once kept you trapped. You're not who you were when they broke you. You're who you became when you decided you wouldn't stay broken.